Yo, what is up guys? It's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see what if Naruto becomes the mythical knight, part 8. Hope you will love the video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. So let's get into the video.
Hanabi Hyuga was once again dressed in black with her bow, arrows, and wearing her large sunglasses to hide her eyes. She had been practicing with her bow in secret for the past couple of days, and even though she had been told off by hunters, she had snuck out again, and was now leaping across the rooftops of Greyland, trying to find some petty crime too. Well, uncrime, was that right? Was it called uncriming? Hanabi shook that silly thought away, as she was letting her mind procrastinate. She could do this, she told herself. She had to, so that she could discover what being a hero was really about. She could be just as good a hero as Arrow and Huntress. She was a Hyuga after all, even though she had come to realize that she shouldn't be that ignorant. She still had to have some faith in her family's skills, even if she was mixing things up. Her own self-confidence had been knocked a little, as Hinata returned from her mission with her team, and Hinata told their dad to go screw himself when he demanded for her to spar with Hanabi, as soon as she got through the front door. Hanabi had been even more shocked than their father had been, as she had never imagined her big sister would have the guts, but Hinata had said it while looking so nonchalant. Then the next morning, yesterday morning, Hinata was ready before anyone, dressed in some white, light purple robes, open and hanging loosely, nothing on her feet with silk trousers, and a top that hugged her body in all those right ways in the dojo. She looked like she was annoyed they took their time getting there. Their father had still been angry from the night before, as he, Hanabi, and Niji arrived to get some morning training in. Hinata had been stretching when they arrived, and looked amused, as all three presented scowls, as per usual. That should have been the first sign that the Hinata they knew was gone, and that whatever happened on her mission must have been terrible to change her so drastically. The second sign was when she offered to spar with one of them, and didn't seem to care which one of them. Though, thinking about it, maybe the form-hugging outfit was the real first sign. Their father had been only too eager to watch his youngest daughter teach his eldest some manners. However, it didn't go down like that. Hinata had totally humiliated and humbled the 11-year-old Hanabi. Hinata had dodged every attack with the simplest of ease, and to make matters worse, during the whole spar she didn't activate her, and didn't even look tempted. She looked bored. Then when Hanabi was getting frustrated and demanding Hinata fight back, Hinata did, and Hanabi ended up embedded in a wall, feeling as if one had hit her too. Hanabi still couldn't remember what happened. She hadn't seen it coming. It took Hanabi all day to realize she must have passed out for a second or two. She was hit so hard. She was still feeling a little sore. Then, after being humiliated and humbled by her big sister's superior talent, Hanabi watched her sister go toe-to-toe with Niji. He had been very eager to activate his, and go in to finish her quickly like usual, but still she stayed off, which was unusual. Hanabi, her father, and Niji expected it to be over pretty quick, but it wasn't. Hinata had matched Niji hit for hit while wearing a smirk on her lips, as she swiftly moved with a grace that awed Hanabi, like she was the flow of water, and was moving with so little effort that it looked like she was playing. Niji just couldn't hit her, and she either blocked or dodged. Niji had even gotten within range for the 64 palm strike in his anger with her, while sprouting about her fate to lose. Hanabi had never seen the 64 palm strike stop before, but with strike 1 Hinata's right hand grabbed his left wrist, and then, as strike 2 was on its way, Hinata backhanded Niji's right hand back with enough force that he cried out, as a few of his fingers snapped like twigs, stopping him with sheer chakra force. Then Niji got a chakra wave strike from Hinata's right knee straight into his gut. Niji had gone flying back several feet, falling to his knees, holding his stomach, and cradling his fingers in pain. Niji looked up at Hinata, as she laughed. "Lady Fate is my bitch," Hinata said mockingly. "And Destiny-chan, worship at my feet. I don't care whether you like me or not, Niji-baka. I don't expect nor want you to add any kind of to the end of my name. But I will say that, if I catch you taking your anger out on anyone other than my arsehole father again, I'll break more than a few of your fingers, and your pride." Niji could only look up at Hinata in a hate and anger that would have even worried their father, but not Hinata. Whatever had happened during that mission was far worse than any of her family, and Hanabi dreads to find out what could turn a shy weakling into a confident powerhouse. However, shaking off that, Hanabi realized in shock, as it just occurred to her. Hinata must have been letting her win for years. The thought made Hanabi shudder. Honestly. The thought was amusing. The look on their father's face was astonishment beyond anything Hanabi had ever seen, and he chose not to accept Hinata's invitation to spar her next. Their father had stormed out of the dojo in fury. Hinata had put a lot of their clansmen in their place that day, and broke more bones than fingers. Hanabi didn't think any more clansmen were going to accept Hinata's challenges again in the near future. Hanabi quivered, as she thought of her big sister, and smiled a little, as she could only learn, and grow more herself, to get stronger. Her sister had gotten stronger trying new things, so she will too, hopefully, without whatever trauma got her sister. Looking around the dark streets, Hanabi quietly stalked through the shadows when she finally saw something that looked out of place. She quickly snuck closer to where this woman was being shaken by a man, and was crying out for help. The man was laughing, and big, brutish, and looked to be enjoying himself. However, looking at the scene closely, something seemed further out of place. Hanabi drew and cocked an arrow into her bow anyway, and aimed. Taking a soft breath, she fired. But that might have been a mistake, as the woman surprisingly moved swiftly and caught her arrow and crushed it in her hand, not even giving it a look. "Up there," she called out venomously. Hanabi staggered back and bumped into a couple of filthily sneering ninja. "Will you look at this, a piss-poor little girl playing games with a bow? It looks like this arrow bastard has a fan," he laughed as he drew back his fist to hit her. She flinched, closed her eyes, and awaited the pain when she heard the man hiss out instead of punching her. Hanabi's eyes widened to see a green-colored arrow stuck through the man's forearm, a look of pain on his face before the arrow burst open, and a net pulled back wrapping around the man. He screamed as he bounced to the roof and rolled down with a crunch. He hit the floor below. The other man completely ignored Hanabi as she moved away from him, notching a second arrow as he turned around looking for the second archer. However, it was his mistake, as Hanabi's arrow ended up in his shoulder. He hissed out and cussed as he turned a raging temper to her, his eyes nearly crossed with anger. "Hey, hold up there, Speedy-chan." Hanabi was startled and looked up to see him standing right up close behind her. She could just make out the smirk under his hood. He held an arrow in his hand, but his bow was obviously hidden as he crouched down. Hanabi's hidden cheeks flushed as the archer wrapped his strong arms around her and notched the arrow in her bow, helping her hold it steady. "It's all about the timing, predicting your enemy's movements, observation, and patience," Arrow whispered in Hanabi's right ear, sending a shiver down her spine. "Okay, Speedy-chan," he said, and she knew he was using the name ironically right now. "What do you think he's going to do now? Run?" she asked, looking at how frightened the man looked now, as he held his bloodied wound that she had caused. Now that Arrow was with her, he wasn't scary at all. The man was terrified and outclassed. The man ran. He turned fast and started sprinting away across the roof. "Just tap some chakra into the tip of the feather," Arrow said, as he helped her aim, and she looked down the stem at the odd fat round arrowhead. She did, as he said, and her eyes widened as a vent in the arrow started blinking red, and she let go. Hanabi watched with awe as the arrowhead spun like a drill and cut a perfect path through the air, and in less than a second, the Konohinin screamed as the arrow sliced through the small of his back and exploded, ripping the man's body apart. Hanabi felt sick, but she would not here, not with her idol so close. Hanabi would never say that out loud, but she knew she was idolizing the man to first save her life. The man to rescue her from those Kumonin, and now here, and he even let her fire such an awesome arrow. The arrow let go of Hanabi, and moved. He pulled a sword from his back, and Hanabi's eyes widened as it switched around and changed into a bow. The woman and man that tricked her had gotten on the roof. She watched with renewed awe as one thick-looking arrowhead had burst open, and hundreds of tiny needles shot out slicing through the two bad Konohinin, killing them in a rain of death and spray of blood. Hanabi couldn't help but marvel at how much blood it spilled when another arrow flew seconds later, and an electric net blazed with power, and screamed as it captured two more ninja. They dropped seconds later, contained. Then moving, Arrow dodged back and skidded back. He pulled Hanabi along with him, but keeping her behind him, shielding her. They paused, and standing where they had been, was none other than Sharingan Kakashi, the copycat ninja with his one eye spinning with anger, as he stood to face Arrow. They both stared at each other for a few moments. "So, you the one killing my comrades?" Kakashi said with a sneer. "I expected you to be taller, more impressive." Arrow chuckled before looking back at Hanabi. "Speedy-chan," he said quietly enough that Kakashi would not hear. "Close your eyes," he said, as she watched some kind of dark glass screen slide down from his headband, covering his eyes. She wasn't sure why, but she didn't want to know what would happen if she didn't. "I'm sorry, Kakashi-san," Arrow said, "but they're here in my town committing crimes against my people. If you have a problem with them dying, then you should deal with them, but I couldn't care less, so bring it." The arrow was flying into the air, high above them before Kakashi could react. His eyes trailed after the arrow, keeping alert, waiting for some trick to attack him when he saw the spinning, bulky net-like arrowhead flashing white. 1, 2. And then he screamed in an agony he had never felt in all of his life. It felt as if his brain was being ripped out of his skull to only be molested by 1,000 miniature horny weasels. Kakashi's hands flew up to his eyes as he screamed and cried, and knew his vision was completely gone, and he dropped to his knees. Hanabi knew that whatever just happened was an anti-Dijutsu arrow because even wearing sunglasses and closing her eyes, her arms came up to cover them in reflection because of the blinding flash, and she could still see it. The flash was only brief, like the flash on a camera, only a lot brighter. It would probably hurt normal eyes and blind someone for a minute or so, but to an activated eye bloodline it would likely feel more pleasant to have your eyes scooped out of your head by a rusty fork. When Hanabi finally opened her eyes, she had to blink colors from her vision and spots away. Looking through the haze of her slowly repairing vision, she could see Kakashi screaming and writhing in agony on the roof holding his eyes. And rolling around crying like the universe hated him more than anyone else. Ero turned from him with a smirk, as the glasses he had were now back on his headband. "Let's get out of here, Speedy-chan," he said, as he grabbed the surprised girl, and they blast away in a burst of wind, only to appear back near the Hyuga compound within a few minutes, as it wasn't too far from where they were, only in a nicer district, but even still, Hanabi was impressed with Ero's shunshin speed. "You should go home now, Speedy-chan. It's dangerous out there. I'm being hunted by ninjas who have no loyalty to the Hokage or the people of this city. But I can help you," she quickly said. "Please, can you teach me? I'll get better, I promise," she begged hopefully. Ero frowned in thought for a moment before turning from her. Her hopeful lip dropped. "I'll think about it, just go home, Speedy-chan," he said before he burst away in a blast of wind. Hanabi smiled in relief, and was hopeful once more. With Ero actually training her, she would get so much better, and then maybe, someday she wouldn't be beaten like a ragdoll by her sister. Well, she could only hope to last longer. Mythical nights. It was a nice morning, and Naruto went around with his normal routine, showered, had breakfast, and dress. He put on a dark blue shirt with the cuffs left undone, and only the center 2 buttons done up, as it was such a nice day with a pair of cream cargo trousers, and white trainers. He had just finished his breakfast, and brushed his teeth when Yukina drifted through a door out of her room. Naruto had finally gotten a little more furniture because Yukina wanted some nice stuff. It wasn't like she could change her clothes, as far as they knew, so she wanted some nice furniture since Naruto let her move in. He had offered her a free place of her own to haunt, but she didn't want to be all alone, so he let her have one of his spare rooms while using another as an office. Yukina smiled as she sat up at the breakfast bar in the kitchen with him. "So, what are you doing today, Naruto-kun?" Naruto shrugged. "To be honest, I have no plans, but Ino-chan did say she wanted to take me to see Sakura actually training." "So, is this Sakura lazy?" she asked with a giggle, as he nodded. "Well, don't worry about me. I've got plenty of chores to get done. And those new people are moving in today, so I have to be around in case they have any more questions. Yeah, just try not to scare them away with the whole ghost thing," he said, laughing while she pouted. She would have replied if there wasn't a knock on the door. "I'll get that, so please don't walk through any walls or closed doors, or fly in front of everyone. You nearly killed Ten-chan yesterday, as it is." "Sorry, I just didn't think about it," she replied sheepishly, as the door knocked again, and she remembered the time at Tenten's shop the day before, but after the initial scare Tenten and Yukina got on well. "Okay, I'm coming," Naruto shouted out, as he left the kitchen, and got to the front door, frowning at the assortment of people he could smell before he pulled open the door. Naruto smiled, as Ino was there looking at the others just as confused as him. It was the old man Hokage with Kurenai-sensei, and some large man with a long black coat, and standard uniform with 2 scars along his face, and a bandana over his obviously bald head. "Naruto-kun," the Hokage greeted with a smile. "This is Ibiki Marino from T, and I can come in?" he asked, as Ino hadn't waited for an invite, and just walked in, and hugged Naruto, which he was happy to return. "Sure," Naruto agreed, shrugging, as he led Ino into the lounge where he sat on a couch with Ino next to him. They entered, and closed the door behind them, and came into the lounge area. The old man took a seat in a single chair looking around in surprise, while the other 2 stayed standing. "I see you finally bought some extra furniture," the old man said, smiling. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. Apparently the place looked too bare with just 1 couch and a coffee table. He shrugged again, still smiling. "Oh, sensei, Ibiki-san, please take a seat," he said, gesturing to the other couch and the chair. Kurenai took the chair while Ibiki the couch. "Does anyone want a drink? A tea or coffee, or I think I have some fresh juice in the fridge." No, we'll be fine, but thank you, Naruto-kun," the Hokage said smilingly. "We won't keep you from your time off for too long." "Great, so what do you guys want?" he asked, confused. "Just a few things," Ibiki answered. "You're the only ninja registered in Greyland that we consider trustworthy. This is highly confidential, but we're looking to find the Green Arrow, and we can't just have any ninja looking out for him for us." He had totally defeated Kakashi Haddock last night. He trailed off with a chuckle and a nod at their shocked expressions. "Kakashi has been temporarily blinded and taken off active duty, but at least we now know for certain that his loyalty is to the council and the Uchiha Baka. Well, who knows with that, if the Uchiha has any sense. But the council sent Kakashi after Arrow." "Wow, that's pretty bad," Naruto said in thought. "So, you want to employ Arrow to beat up more bad guys because he seems to be doing that already?" "Well, yes," Ibiki agreed with a smirk. "He has proven himself time and time again that he is a powerful shinobi with talent and skill, and that he'll use that talent and skill for the people. It's just we may or may not have some inside information we might accidentally leave out, so he could potentially secure evidence or secure that evidence is out in the open. Well, I'm sure you get what I'm saying." "I see, so what do you want from me?" Naruto asked thoughtfully. "You don't want me to try capturing him, do you?" No, the Hokage answered, chuckling. We just want you to keep your eyes open, and for you to try speaking to him, and informing him of our offer to actively employ him to deal some significant blows to some corrupt people here and there. He said with a smile before he produced a scroll from his inside pocket, and it proved, and left a large folder of papers on Naruto's coffee table. If you could somehow get these to him, as a show of faith, and tell him that we'll continue turning a blind eye to his other activities. So, you would turn a blind eye if I started offing the filth around here? Naruto asked with a quizzical grin. Sorry, I don't believe we heard anything, the old man replied laughing. Anyway, those files, if you know. Burn them if I have to, Naruto suggested, and keep them safe from unscrupulous eyes. Exactly, the old man said with a smile. I can trust you to get things done, and we'll make sure to add a few extra missions to your count, as this will be off the official books, he said, giving into a cool look. Ino smiled sheepishly, and made a zipping motion over her lips. I live to serve, she said straight-faced before laughing, as she hugged Naruto's arm, and he rolled his eyes at her. My Naruto-kun, but she turned to the amused Hokage. As you know, my family is with you. Of course, Ino-chan, the Hokage said with a smile before turning back to Naruto. However, we're also here for the Aeon staff you acquired from Grey Hell Temple. I don't think so, Naruto replied smilingly. I can't hand it over in case the council finds out about it. It will then end up in some evil douchebag's hands, and no offense, but I think Katniss and her friends would use it for less evil. The Hokage sighed while nodding his head. I don't think I could disagree with that, and keep a straight face, but we don't even know what the staff does, the old man said. And I assure you Naruto-kun that no one other than us will know we have this staff. It needs to be locked away and studied, Ibiki said. If we find out what it's for, we'll be prepared in case this witch and her friends find a different way to accomplish their goals. I shall swear here that I will take personal responsibility for protecting it. Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes as he pulled out a silver chain phoenix pendant from around his neck with a little green stick taped to the backside. He pulled it off, and they all gasped as it grew into its full form. Here, Naruto said with a sigh, as he handed it over, and put his pendant back. None of them knew it was a key, and that the staff didn't seem to do much without it. He was not going to tell them. He wanted to keep them apart if he didn't have them both. He just couldn't bring himself to trust that they would both be safe. Thank you, Naruto-kun, the old man said looking relieved that Naruto didn't put up an argument to keep the staff. Yes, quite, Ibiki said with a nod. We thank you for your time, but one last thing. The Zodiac is looking to fill a few spaces from a lost member, he said, as he stood. The three you met at Grey Hill were impressed, and now they're looking at you. So, if you're interested, I suggest impressing them further by doing your best in the exams. Thanks for the heads up, Naruto said, as he remembered the day before when Kurenai gave him and his team their applications to the exam. The Hokage and Kurenai stood next. Yes, good luck with the tournament Naruto-kun, the old man said proudly. Kurenai also nodded with a smirk. Don't have too much fun, and get some training in. Don't forget it starts on Saturday, so you only have 5 days left to prepare. Thanks sensei, he replied smiling, as he led them to the door. Naruto-kun Yukina called out, as she floated through the wall right in front of Ibiki. The large and normally scary man screamed like a little girl, and nearly tore the door off its hinges, as he fled. He screamed about a ghost repeatedly, as he ran for his life. Naruto burst out laughing while the Hokage stepped around her looking nervous, and quickly left with Kurenai sighing, and following him. Oh, sorry, Naruto-kun, the ghost girl said, looking sheepish. I thought they had left. I just wanted to tell you that the lights aren't working. They just went off, and I went and checked out some of the other apartments, and it's the whole building. Naruto sighed sadly. Fucking electric company. They're probably trying to extort more money out of me. Screw them. I have enough chakra, and I've just set up an emergency generator while my clones did. It's full, so could you go downstairs and turn it on? I'm just going to get some new systems up. I have quite a few ideas my clones have been working on, and I have enough chakra to power the generators by myself. Akadoki, Naruto-kun, she readily agreed, as she sank through the floor. Ino came up to him looking annoyed. Has this happened before then? She asked him. He nodded his head. Yeah, and I knew they would do it again, especially after they found out I'm making rent on the other apartments. But since I was in the know, I've started some new projects to get power without paying them for it. Competition can be healthy after all. They rip off everyone in Greyland and Night Town, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they were ripping off the hospital and Hokage Tower. They're such scum, and the city's location makes competition difficult, so it's not just because of who I am. They can't just do that. No, they can, for now, he replied, smirking. But trust me, Ino-chan. I have my own schemes in the works to get back at all these greedy bastards. Anyway, you wanted to show me Sakura. Ino grinned widely, grabbed Naruto's hand, and dragged him out of the apartment. It took them no time, as they ran so fast to reach the training ground and find Anko with Sakura. The pink-haired girl looked like she had run a mile in just 5 seconds, with no super speed techniques or teleportation of any kind. She was covered in sweat and breathing deeply as she hung in a wire trap by her right foot, wearing a cheerleader outfit with her skirt hanging up and showing off her tight red panty briefs as her other leg dangled, spreading her legs open. Enko was mocking Sakura for getting caught by such an easy trap. She wasn't even trying to get free when Naruto appeared in a poof of smoke upside down on a slightly lower branch. Sakura just looked at Naruto, but otherwise made no motion to get away or talk, even though they were so close that his face was only even with her navel. Naruto laughed and poked her in the tummy, but she didn't even react. She was still breathing heavily, and then he stroked his fingers along her bare tummy, but she just managed a small giggle. As it tickled, she just continued hanging, arms limp above her head, legs open wide. Please don't, that tickles, please Naruto, Sakura begged breathlessly, her cheeks now flushed. I see, can't get down. I've been fleeing from Enko-sensei for about 5 hours now. It's only been 2 hours, and I finally caught you. Enko shouted while laughing. It's only 2 in the afternoon. I was taking my time, and going easy on you, Pinkie Pie. Wow, you did pretty good, Sakura, Naruto said laughing, as he poked her tummy again, causing her to giggle more. But you seem to be having so much trouble, I'll admit. I'm curious, now your legs are so wide open, does your pink hair translate to hair elsewhere? No, Sakura whined while Enko and Ino were giggling, as Naruto reached for Sakura's panty briefs and ran his fingers along the outside seam, making her shiver and squirm as she tried to move. It does, Enko answered laughingly, as Sakura's flushed cheeks somehow managed to darken further. Well, maybe I'll have a peek another time, Sakura, Naruto teased, but she sighed in relief as he stopped feeling her up. You want me to at least get you down, or are you supposed to get down yourself? He asked, as he poked her tummy again, making her swing slightly. She has to get down herself or she gets no lunch. Enko called up smugly. Now get that lovely little butt down here, or I'll have to get Naruto to spank it. Sakura looked at Naruto tiredly while he grinned, and cracked his knuckles before reaching over and running a couple of fingers along her tight little bum. Sakura grimaced as she realized Naruto was going to spank her, and with a lot of effort, she managed to pull out a kunai and cut herself free. Sakura fell and closed her eyes, as it was going to hurt when she stopped a few feet from the ground, as a hand grabbed her left ankle. Sakura looked up at Naruto holding her ankle, as he stood upside down taking her full weight before she let her eyes close and passed out finally. Wow, I guess she really was running on empty, Enko said, as she looked at her beaten up student, as Naruto pulled her up into his arms and dropped from the tree and carefully laid her down, before she shrugged. She should have taken the spanking. She would have loved it. She could have landed on her head, if you weren't such a sweetie, Naruto-kun. Are you just going to leave her there? Ino asked, worried about her somewhat friend, as Sakura was always too exhausted to be a bitch since being Enko's student. She could actually be nice now, and more fun to tease, and hadn't mentioned Sasuke since she got her new sensei, and Ino supposed until Kakashi got his sight back Sakura would belong to Enko permanently. It could only help her. No, when she passes out or knocks herself out, or I knock her out, I'll just carry her around until she wakes up, Enko replied while rolling her eyes. Or I'll just take a seat and read a magazine, but since you're both here, how about I see what you can do? She would regret that later. Mythical nights. It was early evening when a green-haired young woman was walking through a district in Konoha looking for her savior. It seemed like it was a bit of a shithole, but she was following her instincts. She wanted to make certain that her key was safe. She couldn't care less about the annoying staff, but she supposed it would be best if that were safe too. She was wearing an all-in-one white suit with black markings. It had long sleeves with straps, but the trouser legs were tied up so she didn't trip. She was barefoot and walking past a nice-looking apartment block, which was a huge surprise. It looked like it was having work done. It was most certainly the nicest place around her by a long margin, and had a gated park that seemed to be half built for children to play in, and be safe once complete with fences and gates to keep out the local trash. It was with those thoughts that she almost missed the 3 men ahead of her talking loudly. Come on, Arrow can't be everywhere. The large one said laughingly, and proving he was the trash to be kept out of the apartment block's cute play park. Come on, the green-haired bitch will be an easy quick lay. She might even have some cash on her, maybe enough for a little silver dust or maybe even some black snake. The young green-haired woman stopped at that, and frowned, as she realized they were talking about her. She knew her looks and body were far out of their league, but she would have no interest in them on a mental level either, so that seemed to be a moot point. She just stared at them, daring them to try anything, and wasn't disappointed, as they were obviously morons. If this was the Green Arrows, as she realized that was her savior, hometown, then these men were idiots. But not only that, but this was a ninja city jumping a random person, especially one dressed strangely, could be hazardous to your life whether you're dumped in tea. And as they deal with attacks on ninja or ninja attacks on innocent civilians or just ninja having committed crimes or just accidentally killed. Raising her left hand outstretched, her sleeve slid back to reveal her small hand, and like her toenails her fingers were painted lime green. Her yellow eyes lit up, and the weak little civilians stopped as their feet left the ground. I'm looking for a young man who may have a silver phoenix pendant around his neck, she said to the men, as they struggled and panicked in her hold. We don't know who you're talking about, one called out, as he messed himself looking at the nonchalant girl. I see, she replied, rolling her eyes. If you morons don't know who I'm looking for, then you are of no use to me, and you are certainly of no use to Konoha. She finished out flicking her hand. They crashed into a brick wall, shattering their faces, and heads, and necks. As they fell down into a large bin outside a building with the lid closing on them, she shrugged. You're probably looking for me. She turned to see Naruto behind her smirking, as he revealed the key before hiding it back in his shirt. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and you are? I am Hikage, she answered with a smirk. It is good to see you again. I realize I did not give you my name before. So, you are my new master. I am glad. Katniss-chan is so strange, and probably not worthy of using the Aeon staff, and certainly not Yuki. Well, what do you want? Naruto asked while feeling kind of baffled, as the key felt warm being so close to Hikage, it drew him to her. I have come to help you guard the key, and the staff. The staff are on lockdown, Naruto said sheepishly. I couldn't exactly hide that I had it. I see, that is better than keeping it with the key, Hikage said thoughtfully. But maybe we should go somewhere more private. Okay, Naruto agreed with a sigh, as he led her into his apartment building. Here, he said, leading her into a 3-bedroom apartment that had just been finished, as he got a plan going. They talked for a while, but that was mainly about her desire to stay. He gave her the apartment, and a joint job with Yukina, as apartment managers. Yukina was pleased, and Hikage was agreeable to helping Yukina learn to use her ghostly powers, and the two became roommates, as Naruto wouldn't always be in the village to keep Yukina company, but Hikage would be. He left the girls with a sigh after giving Hikage a few ryo for some clothes, shoes, and stuff that she might need, and Yukina looked ecstatic at the chance to take Hikage shopping, and dress her up in some cute outfits. Naruto left Hikage and Yukina, and when he got to his front door, he was surprised to find Hinata sitting on his doorstep surrounded by bags, and a few suitcases. Hinata stood up with a smile while Naruto pulled her into his arms, and gave her a loving, and deep long kiss before smiling, as he unlocked the door, and held her in with her bags, setting them aside. Sorry, Naruto-kun, Hinata said sheepishly, as he closed the door behind them. I just got sick of my father today, and Chief shot him in the mouth, and then broke one of his legs. So well, I grabbed all my things, and left. You don't mind, do you? Of course not, he replied, giving her soft lips a kiss, as he cuddled her tightly within his arms where she snuggled comfortably. You can stay with me forever if you want, he said with a cheeky smirk. However, she blushed while nodding, as she kissed his lips some more. Come on, Naruto said, as he pulled back, and picked up all but one of her bags single-handedly, as he couldn't quite get the last one, but caused Hinata to giggle some, as she enjoyed watching him trying, but failing to grab the last bag. Let's find some closet space for your things. Hinata nodded, as she grabbed her last bag, and followed Naruto into their room, and placing her things down, he opened the large walk-in closet, and Hinata peered in to find some large chest of drawers running the bottom, and rails with plenty of clothes hangers, but looking around. Naruto-kun, Hinata reprimanded. You only have 3 suits, and some ninja clothes. You need to buy some more clothes where you keep them. Naruto laughed, as he wrapped his arms around Hinata's waist from behind, and leant his chin on her shoulder while smiling. Maybe I have my own lair, Naruto said smugly. Naruto-kun, Hinata said with a content sigh, as she leaned back into him, and held his hands to her tummy. Hanabi-chan admires you so much. Thanks for looking out for her after I found out what she has been getting up to. If Ten-chan hadn't been training, and didn't find her that day, the goddess only knows. My sister isn't going to stop, is she? I don't think so, Naruto agreed sadly. Unless her sexy and wonderful big sister were to mentor her, and take all of that obsession away for herself. I wish I could, Hinata said sadly. At least embarrass her, as much as you can for me. Naruto laughed while Hinata giggled shyly, as she turned in Naruto's arms, and stole his lips, and let her tongue wander, while Naruto stroked his hands down her firm body, and grabbed her firm powerful arse, and pulled her up into his arms, while her legs wrapped around his waist. Mythical nights. Hanabi Hyuga sighed, as she entered her room after the academy. She had just heard her sister had kicked their father's arse or something, and left home. Hanabi would probably miss her sister. She loved her sister, but things were so complicated. Though, Hanabi wondered whether she should find it amusing or not in her sister's defection when she froze. Her eyes widened at what was laid out on her bed. It was red, and black leather clothes, but it was the folded high-tech bow, scarlet-handled dagger, and quiver-fuller scarlet-colored arrows, and the ski-type sunglasses next to them that caught her wide-eyed attention. Hanabi gulped, as she ran her fingers across the alloy of the bow, and looked at the partitions on the shaped quiver full of all sorts of different types of arrows. It had a note on top, which read, "Adorable little, Speedy-chan." Hanabi was blushing bright red, as she wondered whether she really was adorable. That was probably one of many words no one had associated with her before. People would mostly call her a lot of horrible things, which made her feel down, as she wasn't the nicest person to the other kids at the academy, and should probably work on that if she wanted to get stronger like her sister. Meet me at the Heroes Memorial at 9 p.m. Hanabi could barely believe that Ero could have the gall to sneak into her family compound, let alone the fact he got in and out without anyone spotting him, but she smirked. Ero had accepted her, and she couldn't wait. Looking at the time, she had enough time to have a shower and eat, and then some to spare. It was lucky she had some spare time. Hanabi had to hide her new things in a large backpack and sneak out of her compound without anyone capturing her. It never occurred to her to just act normally and walk out of the front door like she owned the place, which she did. It was nearly 9 by the time Hanabi got to the location, and then she had to change. She looked around to make sure no one was around before quickly stripping out of her everyday house clothes. Hanabi didn't take long getting into her new clothes. Her long hair was easy to put down the back of her top as she pulled up her hood and put on the scarlet glasses. She was surprised the glasses allowed her to see so effortlessly in the dark. Her top was crimson and tight, armored, and fit her snugly while leaving room to breathe and leading down into the tight trousers, which were black. She had black boots on, and a red belt around her waist with an arrow-shaped buckle that made the trousers and long-sleeve top look like an all-in-one suit. The top had a v-neck that showed off the soft foam-like black t-shirt underneath with a black zip rolling around the open flap that led up to 2 high collars that would close around her mouth when zipped up. Her hood was up hiding her face in shadows, and she had on tight scarlet gloves, and her folded bow in a holster on her left hip with her dagger-like sword on the back of her hips below where her quiver sat on her back full of all sorts of arrows the likes of which excited her to test out. She hoped she would get to use them on criminals sometime soon. Next time get changed at home, Speedy-chan. Hanabi was startled as she looked around the dark woods to see Ero standing on top of the hero's monument. She blushed brightly as she realized he must have been here before her and watched her change. Her eyes blinked behind her glasses several times while her cheeks darkened impossibly as she thought of him seeing her naked, and that made her heart beat painfully in her chest. First rule, Naruto said laughingly. Embarrassment can get you killed, but we'll deal with things like that another time. Let's see now, Lesson 1, Stealth. If you take so long to sneak out of your own house unnoticed, how are you going to sneak up on your enemies in unfamiliar territory? I'm pretty sure you could have just walked out of the front door of your own house and snuck off from there. Hanabi's eyes widened further behind her glasses as she realized he might have been at her compound since he dropped off her new stuff, which gave her a completely new load of respect, and if he could get away with that, he could watch her changing anytime. As long as he taught her how to be that sneaky. Her cheeks blushed more as she quivered with excitement as her new sensei was amazing. If you're going to be my student, stealth is the fundamental element, Ero continued. If you cannot move without being spotted, even by people who can see through walls, then this is pointless. This is a ninja city where ninjas take orders for money, meaning the council will hunt us, so it's necessary to hide in the dark, to be better than them. Do you understand? Yes, Ero-sensei, I'll do my best, she readily agreed. I can be better than ever. That's the right attitude, Speedy-chan, Ero said with a smirk, and he dropped to the ground next to her. Now follow me, Ero said. I'll make sure you can always see my movements, and learn from me. I have recently gotten some interesting information, so we're going hunting. Ero moved swiftly, and Hanabi found it hard to keep up while weaving through the trees, but she knew he could have made it harder by running in the trees. She was startled, as once she made the tree line back towards the district, she lost sight of him before startling, as he was suddenly beside her. They had run around a good 30 minutes or so, and they peeked out on a place Hanabi didn't know, maybe the edge of District 9. She heard there were plenty of bars and clubs and things also known as Night Town, but like with all things with night in the title, they also had to have a daytime too. It was just she heard most of the district was in darker shadows than the night provided, and further in she could see roofs and verandas crisscrossing and making the places further enshadowed. However, they were looking out towards a bar set into the side of a taller building that likely housed rooms like an inn with balconies going up several floors, and it looked like a rundown pigsty, or close enough. Before the building was a small patch of beaten-up muddy grass out back with low-cut steel fence around with a child's abandoned and filthy play park left to rot. It had a beer garden with loads of rowdy men outside at wooden benches and tables that were falling apart, with some candle lanterns to make up for the 2 shoddy lighting fixtures on the side of the building, barely giving off much light, but they got some extra light from the open back doors. Believe it or not, Speedy-chan, but the owner of this bar is a part of a human trafficking ring, Ero said coolly. He makes a few council members money, so he's been getting away with his crimes. He even keeps some girls here in chains to be used. This is the far edge of where Greyland and Night Town meet, and people tend to ignore places like this, but I also know this man, and his associates have kidnapped orphans during times of war or crisis. Then what do we do? Hanabi asked, as she was almost sick, as she saw some young woman with a dead look in her eyes, wearing a huge metal collar chained to the outside wall in filthy rags, shivering like a misbehaved dog next to one of the 3 doors leading inside. We kill Everlast, one of the bar's patrons, and the owner, Arrow answered, shocking her even though she should have predicted nothing less. They have their chance right here where they laugh and taunt the misery of a living being. It would be better to die than suffer this kind of pain. Follow me, Speedy-chan. Arrow drew an arrow and notched it while Hanabi's bow opened, and she notched her own arrow. Hanabi followed Arrow through the shadows, and then he fired while hopping over the small fence. Hanabi fired after, 2 dead men exploded, and hell broke loose with screams, crying, and dying. Hanabi couldn't believe what she was doing. She had been killed before, but they were ninja, these were mostly civilians, and they died so easily. Hanabi had never thought that in a million years she would ever do something so destructive. It was a bloodbath, and she moved on autopilot, re-notching her bow with an arrow. Her new bow was so much lighter than her old one, her aim so much better with it, as she stayed by Arrow's side. Though, Hanabi felt sick, these people were terrible criminals, and when they were inside, Hanabi felt white-hot anger, and vicious fury spread through her veins, as she saw girls, and women of all ages in chains, some naked having been used like toys. Most of the slaves just watched, showing no emotion at all, others were crying, from relief or fear, Speedy couldn't tell, and some even looked insane, as they picked up what they could while laughing, shouting or crying, and beat or cut men down in their own vengeance. Taking advantage of the attack, Speedy watched Arrow move, as his bow turned into a sword, and sliced through men trying to escape him. She realized that a bow wasn't ideal for close quarters in a confined space. Her bow folded, and went back on her hip, as she drew her blade. She started hacking through men who thought she would be easy to get past, but she wasn't. The place was much larger than she had thought, and held more people than she thought it would, when she felt some hands grab her neck, as a man attacked her, by the look of his uniform, However, a small purple arrow sliced into his face with clips to hold it in place, and sprayed some yellow missiles into his face. He screamed in agony, as he let go of Speedy, his face melting with the acid. She looked away to see a whole wall had caved in, and Huntress was there with her crossbows shooting fleeing men. The Huntress winked at Hanabi, which made her blush. She watched the Huntress holster her crossbows, and seemingly pull 2 huge swords out of nowhere, and start mowing down men like she had no tomorrow, but then maybe she wanted to make sure the men had no tomorrow. The bar was on fire, and death hung in the air. Screams must have echoed all over Night Town, but no one would care. However, within 10 minutes all were dead except a man wearing an expensive-looking suit, as he scuffled along the floor away from Arrow. The man in the suit whimpered, as he bumped into a leg, and looking up several of the women were behind him with madness in their eyes. Arrow paused, and turned his back on the man, while the piece of shit man screamed, made offers, and made threats, but no one took anything he said seriously, as the women only wanted one thing, and they were getting it: vengeance. Arrow walked away while Speedy watched the man being beaten to death by the women he had kidnapped. She felt sick, and looked away, as Huntress was just leaving, and Arrow guided her out. "So, Speedy-chan, you still want to do this?" Arrow asked, as they exited to find Huntress had slipped away. Speedy looked up, glad she had the glasses, as her eyes were watering with tears. "Yes," she said quietly. "I have to, or I can't become the ninja I want to be." "Very well," Arrow said, as he put his sword on his back, and reached out, pulling the surprised girl into his arms. She held on tight, and whimpered. Arrow picked Speedy up, and held her comfortingly in his arms, as his eyes flashed over into the woods to their right, as he sensed some watchers. Speedy almost gasped, as she felt a tingle like electricity, as they blasted away in a. She had never felt before, and it was completely different when compared to Shunshin, and when they stopped, they were in the trees on a high branch for less than a second, as Arrow's toes barely touched the branch before they moved again with absolute silence. Speedy held on tightly, and quivered. It was no wonder Arrow seemed to be able to save so many people with such speed, but it felt like her head and tummy were being squished. Not many people could even perform one without losing orientation, let alone 2 or 3, as they moved again. That was why ninjas would usually use Shunshin, even though it was a lot slower. Tightening her grip, Speedy felt dizzy after the first jump, but after the 4th, she was sure she was going to pee herself. "Sensei." Speedy whimpered, and they stopped on a branch so high that Speedy held him tighter, as she didn't feel very ninja-like, as her balance was off, and she squirmed, but she knew he would never drop her. "Sorry, Speedy-chan," Arrow replied with a quirky smile. "Someone told me it's like a cross between travel sickness and drinking too much water." Speedy was squirming, and looking worried while trying to shake away the dizziness. "I need to pee, really bad." Arrow sighed, and looked apologetic. "Okay, let's find you a place to take a potty break," he said sheepishly. "Don't worry, you'll get used to eventually, maybe, or at least enough for me to carry you. I hear some people pee themselves straight out on their first run, or throw up, or sometimes, but anyway, you lasted 4 long-range jumps. Congress, Speedy-chan," he said, as he jumped from the tree, and landed on the trunk of another, and ran Hanabi down to a safer peeing level. The 3 people who had watched Arrow and his team slaughter the bar's occupants were Taurus, Leo, and Virgo. They had been near when they heard the explosions, and came to investigate. "So that's Arrow. I can see why Sir Toby and Ibiki want him to work for them," Virgo said with a smirk. And I guess the one in purple is Huntress, but what about this small one in red? I'm not sure, but from his lips I think he called her Speedy, Leo said with a frown. It looks like he's teaching her. The council's going to be pissed when they find out about this, Virgo said with a grin that said she wanted to see their faces when that happened, as they watched, as police and fire vehicles turned up at the bar, and they could only wonder what would be found, as T and I agents were on scene already, just having missed Arrow, Huntress, and Speedy. We should leave, and report to the Hokage that Huntress and Arrow do know each other, Taurus said with a frown. And inform him about the archer's apprentice. They nodded, and the three of them streaked off into the trees.
That's it for today guys. I hope you enjoyed my video and see you in the next part of this video. Till then, sayonara.